Welcome to the A Minute to Midnight show, folks. This is Tony coming to you from New Zealand in association with aminutetomidnight.com. Have a very interesting show today with James Musker returning. I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoy doing the interview. And I want to say thank you to people that donate to help keeping A Minute to Midnight running, because we do run this entirely by donations. I want to offer a very warm welcome to James Musker back on the A Minute to Midnight show on the other side of the world there in England. And once again, it's nice to be talking to someone who isn't in New Zealand or in the United States of America, who most of the guests are either in one of those places. So nice to be chatting to you again, James.
Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, the last show we did was very well received and I thought it was a great show. So I've been looking forward to doing a follow-up show. So maybe just give our listeners a very quick rundown again, if they haven't heard the first one, about who you are, where you are, and about a book that you wrote.
Yes, well, I live in England. I was brought up in the home counties. I am a businessman. I'm also a theologian. I took a degree in religious studies and very keen to study the New World Order and Christianity that I took to quite a high level. With a degree, I studied Hebrew, Aramaic, and some Greek. And I started to write this book a few years ago because I noticed that there was a gaping gap in the information about the New World religion and how it might emerge and the derivations of it, etc. So that's what I wrote.
And what was the name of the book again? You might want to just tell them.
Yeah. Sure. It's called The New World Religion and the Beliefs of the Elite, and it's on Amazon.
And it's a fantastic book. I still haven't bought a hard copy of it yet, but I've got the PDF copy, and it's a fantastic book. So people could certainly do very well to buy it. Okay, so now why actually is the New World Religion so important to know about and understand?
Well, it's all well and good looking at the political and economic situation that we're in the world. But basically, in my opinion, the game is over in terms of us being able to make any political or economic changes to the institutions and the makeup of the society in which we're in today. You could say that the political situation was, the takeover had already happened by about 1900. Some people might say earlier, some people later. And the economic situation, I suppose, could be said to have been accomplished in about 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve. But the media as well, you could say that was taken over in sort of 1890 onwards. So these are big, powerful men behind the corporations, behind the governments. And so my view is that there's no point writing a book about the political and the economic. I mean, it's interesting and it's good and it's needed, but the corruption there and the obfuscations and the hiding of information, that the game is over with the media and the economic and the political and even the military as well. At the moment, we're seeing unprecedented global power, weapons, enough to destroy the world. What's the point of writing about that? But the New World Religion, that really is an interesting subject because it's about how society's being slowly brought into this new system, the new Masonic society. So, yeah, that's why I believe it's important. And if you're an atheist, it's important to understand the New World Religion, since the cryptocracy or the hidden hand are religious people. And you'll only understand what they're doing if you can understand the religious aspect of the rollout of the New World Order. And this is why we've got people like Richard Dawkins and other heavily promoted false teachers telling us that it's all untrue. And all these other areas have been totally subjugated. There's no chance that we can impact society to change the political and economic structures which were already existing. And of course, all of this is in the Bible. So,
and of course, they're all interrelated. The political and the financial and the religious areas. They're all sort of interrelated. And you kind of can't have the New World Order without all of those areas being fully controlled, basically. And yeah, it's while I still cover a lot of stuff to do with the other aspects, and telling people to prepare for the financial crash that's coming, because I think we need to be prepared for things like that, because it's inevitable that we're going to have an economic collapse, so they can actually fully bring that aspect of the New World Order into existence and so on. But yeah, you mentioned the Masonic aspect of it, and of course that is very influential in the political sphere as well. And in your opinion, how much of this goes back to the Tower of Babel?
Well, the spirit behind the Tower of Babel and the building of the tower obviously is the same spirit that we're seeing today. It popped up and has been popping up continuously, but we can see it in various religions and secret societies and various aspects of the history of the last few thousand years cropping up. But the Tower of Babel story is the first time that we actually get this true indication of the one world state, which is represented by the city, and the tower, which is representative of the religion, coming together. And so in Genesis chapter 11, verse 6, we've got God says, if as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, to build a city and a tower, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. So here is God saying that man will create basically a utopian society. So it goes all the way back in antithesis to God, a utopian society against God, in which man will be the God and able to control everything. So that's why the Tower of Babel story is not just an etiological story about the development of languages all over the world, but it also has this deep, if you want, hidden meaning, that it's about the one world order that will be arriving. So it's also mentioned in Revelation, where we've got the one world political system, Revelation 7b. So
13.
And he was,
and that's chapter 13, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, did I say 17?
Yeah.
Chapter 13, sorry. And he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. And the one world economy aspect we can see in the same chapter 13, 16, and 17. He also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or in his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark.
So just out of interest, I noticed you said that you used the word forced. Which translation is that? Because one of the things I always say, look in the King James, for example, it says caused, and I see there's a difference between caused and forced. One is, sort of makes it appear that no one will have a choice, everyone will be coerced into doing it, whereas caused could mean that people actually embrace it and want it. And
yes.
A utopian society, that's what they think it'll be, but of course it's really dystopia.
Absolutely, yes. Of course, man's abilities bring war, God's brings peace. But yes, it's the NIV that I'm using here. And I know it's not perfect, but I like the Old Testament from the NIV because it's exactly as I would translate it, the NIV. I'm not so good on the Greek, so I do use the NIV. Yeah, it does say forced, it might be caused. And the other thing in that verse is you've got the word to receive a mark in or on. There's the other issue there, that the actual Greek apparently is more to do with sort of implanted an idea of it being inside, not on.
Which is what the King James brings out, and the New King James as well, I think, from memory. But they use the word in.
Yeah, so that's great. And then we've got the one world religion obviously mentioned in chapter 13, the same chapter, 3, verse 3b. The whole world was astonished and followed the beast. Men worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. And again in verse 8, we've got all inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the book of life, belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. So there we have it. The New World religion is there. What is it? It's probably a type of Luciferianism. They know that they're worshipping the dragon. And the New World religion is the only major area which has not been subdued. So to get to the New World Order and the neo-feudal serf state that the tiny thin layer of the cryptocracy, the hidden government, are looking to take us to, which is obviously promoted and helped by Satan. He has his agents. In order to get us there, they need to destroy all religions first and destroy society to bring it to total dysfunction. And that's what we're slowly seeing. On the one side, we're seeing things getting better materially, and that's part of this story as well. But on the other, we're seeing our morality being recalibrated as they wish to take us into a Masonic society. So,
yeah, and so again, I think that to me suits the word caused more too, because I agree that they're trying to bring us into a Luciferian Masonic society, and which means I think people will actually embrace it in the end rather than be forced into it. I mean, of course, if you don't take the mark, that's it. It's curtains for you. But I think a lot of people will just embrace it and want it and think that those who don't want it are the idiots, the Neanderthals sort of thing. Anyway, I could be wrong, but that's what I'm expecting.
Oh, well, there are lots of indications that that's correct, Tony, that it's there, so, yeah. The other issue is, how are they going to bring us to this position? Obviously, Satan's busy building up society to take us there. God's obviously sovereign behind everything, but how are they going to actually get us there? They've got hundreds of years, thousands of years to get us to that position of the last 7 years, the tribulation at the end. And that's what we're seeing now, this slow, subtle manipulation and indoctrination, recalibrating everyone's moral code, using institutions to reduce and twist doctrines to fit in with other denominations and to bring us all together into this coexist sort of religion, graying out all fundamentalism of any type. And, if you take the doctrines of the Bible fairly seriously, they'll be trying to knock that down. And one of the ways that they're doing that is to advertise bad Islam. So we might come on to that. So encouraging us to coexist together as brothers for the good of the global community and to be a planetary citizen obedient to the new global order. So this is, I believe, the direction that everything we see is going in. You go to the cinema, you got adverts that are putting you over into the New World religion. You on the newspaper, TV, everything that you're doing, there are these subtle manipulations, and it is all controlled by the media that they're, as I say, that they've been in control of since at least 1890. I would argue. Some people, there are aspects of it, like A Minute to Midnight show, that aren't fully controlled, but there are also huge swathes of the media that are.
Yeah, and people like us, they're trying to shut us down, more and more as well. That's, I think, what we're going to be seeing an increasing amount of. As censorship comes in, they'll eventually try and get rid of all the dissenting voices like ours. And I just listening to what you were saying there, it sprung to my mind, something I've been drilling a lot lately, is how much they, in churches and so on, they're including as above, so below into everything. Bethel Church, for example, they use that actual saying in an advert for a conference they did. The Message translation of the Bible is included in the Lord's Prayer. And it's quite plainly an occult distortion of things, because it's come straight out of the Emerald Tablet and the Zohar. And New Agers have written books on it, and occultists like Alice A. Bailey used the term as above, so below in her works, and yet we're seeing it subtly brought into Christianity in the last few years. And I don't think that's any accident in it either, because it's bringing the occult. It's kind of equating Christianity with the occult in a sense, so it becomes easier to embrace all those occult things.
Yes, that's right. They seek to destroy the doctrines, grey it all out, bring us all in to their system. And yeah, as above, so below is a Hermetic principle from, as you say, the Emerald Tablet. So that's very interesting. And so I wanted to quickly look at the protocols of the Elders of Zion, the Learned Elders of Zion, which is supposedly a hoax.
I don't think it's a hoax at all.
I agree. I don't think it's a hoax either.
I also don't think it's written. I think it's written in code. I don't think it's actually written about a Zionist, as in Jewish, conspiracy at all. It's written in code. Everything the Illuminati did was in code, and I think that's the same with the protocols. So, yeah. Anyway, yes. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on it, but yeah, carry on.
No, similar to that, Tony. Absolutely. This is a very interesting book to read, and it is available on the internet for free if you, start page or Google search it. And the protocols are a blueprint for the taking over of humanity, all the world's institutions and political structures, and bring the Goyim, the Gentiles, into their Masonic society. Goyim really just means nations, but it seems to always have this slightly negative connotation. And the only other book that we're getting this word Goyim in a derogatory sense is in the Talmud. But the protocols cover the media, international banking, advanced economic theory, and a very technical set of instructions on how to control society and bring in every element under their control. They're incredibly in depth. And they just show an amazing understanding of many legal, economic, political, etc. aspects. So the so-called experts would have us believe that the protocols are a forgery, and you'll basically get this all over the mainstream media, and that they're being used as a method of whipping up anti-Semitism. But just quickly, in 1864, Maurice Joly wrote a book, Dialogue in Hell between Machiavelli and Montesquieu, and there are some sections of the protocols which appear here. And since the protocols were published in 1903, the mainstream hoax view is that the writer of the protocols must have copied them from Maurice Joly. But actually the reverse happened. Maurice Joly he was a Frenchman, he was a Mason, and he was a Jew. He saw the protocols and was aghast at them and decided to put them in his book. How else was he going to get the information out there? And he was a member of the Mitzrayim Masonic Lodge in Paris. So from around about 1812, that particular lodge, we think, had become infiltrated by Hebrew Jewish rituals linked to the Bavarian Illuminati, which had gone underground into the Freemason area, and then its activities were discovered years later. And then the protocols were subsequently used by the Russian secret police as a method of whipping up anti-Semitism, so that they went to France, they found this book, and then they got it translated from the French into the Russian to create the protocols. So even though only a small percentage of the book actually comes from Maurice Joly's book, they're still claiming that it's a hoax. But as you say, Tony, it's highly likely that it wasn't. So I think the protocols are a series of lectures given by a high-ranking illuminated Mason at the Paris Mitzrayim Lodge, perhaps written around about 1820s, 30s, 40s perhaps, and that they were added to and slightly amended with different versions up to the end of the 19th century. And if they were fakes written around about this time, they should also mention Zionism, which would have been a political hot potato at the time that the supposed Russian secret police was making them available to whip up anti-Semitism. But of course, there's no mention of that at all. So there we go. So I just wanted to, that's an intro to bringing you into protocol, just mentioning this.
So what is it, like in that protocol that, is there something specific that is helpful for us to know? Because, that's really interesting. You've just taught me some stuff I didn't know. I'm going to be going and looking through your book on this now to learn a bit more and do some more research, because I have researched it a bit, but I've certainly learned something now. So, So what is a specific in there that you really wanted to bring out?
Yes, it is protocol number 14, which is the section on the assault on religion, number 1. And it says, when we come into our kingdom, it will be undesirable for us that there should exist any other religion than ours of the one God with whom our destiny is bound up by our position as the chosen people, and through whom our same destiny is united with the destinies of the world. We must therefore sweep away all other forms of belief. So that's the quote that I wanted to mention. And it does mention the chosen people, so that's Israel. It does mention the one God, so that's Judaism. However, in 14.4 of the protocols, it does explain that their religion is not Judaism. So it says, no one will ever bring under discussion our faith from its true point of view, since this will be fully learned by none save ours, who will never dare to betray its secrets. So if the chosen people mentioned before and the one God, Judaism, we know about that. So why are they saying that no one will be able to understand our faith from its true point of view? They're not referring to Judaism. They're referring to this strange sort of Illuminati, Luciferian religion that they have. So there we have it, from the horse's mouth here in the protocols. And that's what I think is an interesting thing to consider, that the slow rollout of the New World religion is something that goes back, obviously, 200-300 years at least.
And the thing is, these people believe in Illuminism, basically they're Illuminists, or the illuminated ones, illumined ones. So the average person isn't supposed to understand this knowledge, only, those that are initiates.
That's right. And that's why George Bush spoke about David Rockefeller as being the brightest points of light. And he spoke about the 1,000 points of light. In fact, he even started a foundation called the Points of Light Foundation. George Bush was making a reference to Skull and Bones, perhaps, or some other type of religion, because David Rockefeller, he wasn't Skull and Bones, was he? So he's referring to him being within the illuminated Masonic society.
And interestingly too, David Rockefeller was not Jewish. There's no evidence at all to suggest that he was Jewish. So the people that think the New World Order is just a Jewish conspiracy, that I believe falls down with David Rockefeller and a lot of other places too, but it's just one example.
Absolutely. They want to push forward the fact that it's the Jews, because of course then they can point the finger and go, "Oh, you're an anti-Semite," and then they win the argument. So it's very, very clever strategy.
Yeah,
and
of course a lot of the top Illuminists are Jewish by nationality, not by faith, as you're saying, because they're not actually, they're Luciferians. But they do have, Jewish. I don't buy into the Khazarian theory at all. I think that's nonsense. I think people like the Rothschilds are Jewish. They're just wicked Jews. Anyway, sorry, I'll probably taken off track a little bit, but yeah.
No, well, we're people of faith. We're people of truth. We don't want to be swayed by the mainstream, not to have these conversations, and so, that's fine. So the Luciferian philosophy is what these people really adhere to. And that is the philosophy that Satan did mankind a favor by giving Eve the knowledge of the tree, but by, saying, please eat of the tree. In the days that you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you'll be like God, knowing good from evil. And so to them, Lucifer is the hero who broke free from God and the bondage imposed on him by God. And so humanity can perfect itself through interaction with Lucifer's intellect, and that they will eventually conquer everything and become all powerful like God. This is what the Luciferian philosophy is, and sometimes they take it as a metaphor, so they don't really believe it. It's just an interesting story that helps them in order to progress. But behind it all, is Satan. So in their twisted view, God held Adam and Eve as prisoners in the Garden of Eden and stopped Eve from eating of the tree of knowledge. And it was the shining light of the good God Lucifer who enabled mankind's eyes to be opened and illuminated by eating from the tree. So it's linked into the idea of Lucifer being the light bearer. You've got Lucy or Lucis in the Latin, and fer meaning carrier, and that's a translation from the Hebrew halal, which means shining. So there we go. Yeah.
And how does this fit in with Freemasonry? Because ultimately Freemasonry is Luciferian. Once people get to a certain level, they realise that anyway.
Yes, that's right. Isn't it about level 13 to 19, around about that level, that they start to be taught that Luciferianism is Freemasonry? But as I say in my book, actually what happens is when they get a 33-degree Mason, someone goes into them and says, "Jesus Christ is Lord," right at the end. Of course, no, it's terrible. So, yes, in my book, I've got this picture that I just wanted to mention that I think is quite good, because it explains how the Masonic Lodge is actually a reverse. It's in the reverse position as to how the biblical King Solomon's temple really was. In the biblical Solomon's temple, the entrance was in the east. Obviously, it was in Jerusalem, and you had to go to the eastern side of it, which was in a way more tricky to get to. And then the entrance was there, and then the congregation was looking west, where the Holy of Holies was. But in the Freemasons' King Solomon's temple, it's all 180 degrees turned around. So the entrance is in the west. And the people, although they do look opposite each other, but the worshipful master, he sits in the east. So they're looking eastwards. And so, like everything to do with Freemasonry, it's all the wrong way around. So just wanted to quickly
I didn't know that either. So that's another interesting thing I just learned.
Yeah, well, it's mentioned in Ezekiel. He mentions it, Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 15 to 18. Do you want to quickly look at that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, quickly get to Ezekiel. He said to me, this is Ezekiel 8:15, "Do you see this, son of man? You will see things that are even more detestable than this." He then brought me into the inner court of the house of the Lord, and there at the entrance of the temple, between the portico and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs towards the temple of the Lord and their faces towards the east. They were bowing down to the sun in the east. Ezekiel, he could see all this. He knew all about it. So that same, Freemason secret societies, they had them even in these days, all Bible days.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So,
and how does Hermeticism fit in with all of this?
Well, I think that it's quite important to understand Hermeticism, because this is the foundation upon which I believe a lot of modern occultism is built upon. And so in the 3rd century, after Alexander had conquered all of the then known world and he died, he divided it up into 4 kingdoms. And Ptolemy, he took possibly the most important part, it's arguable, Egypt, and he was based in Alexandria. And he started a fake religion because he joined Egyptian religion with Greek philosophy and Hellenism to form Hermeticism. So Ptolemy, he promoted it. He built statues. He built the Serapeum, which is where the god Serapis was. And so there's the bull god of Apis, which is what the Greeks worshipped. And then there was Osiris, the Egyptian god of the afterlife. And Apis was the same Baal Old Testament god that you have in the Old Testament. And Hermeticism is the old religion which grew basically into medieval alchemy. And it's from this that the main Western roots of magical thought are derived. The main river of modern occultism and secret societies, I believe, flows from this joining of Greek and Egyptian. So the main central figure of Hermeticism and alchemy is Hermes Trismegistus, who was the thrice great Hermes, and he was said to have written the Corpus Hermeticum and the Emerald Tablet. Well, maybe he didn't write the Emerald Tablet, but it's related to that, which was rediscovered during the Renaissance. And so it's the same.
They claim he wrote the Emerald Tablet anyway.
Yeah.
Well, there's all sorts of claims about the Emerald Tablet, but we've never seen it. There's no proof there even actually was a literal Emerald Tablet. But
Right.
And then, some other groups of in modern times have come up with a whole group of supposed Emerald Tablets, plural. Yeah, but that is a hoax, I believe. Probably the original Emerald Tablet, singular, maybe did exist, but all the supposed other Emerald Tablets, there's just no evidence for that at all. So,
Yes.
very interesting. And of course,
Yes.
as mentioned, that is where As Above, So Below came from, either there or the Book of the Zohar, depending on which one is earliest. Probably it's the Emerald Tablet that was earlier than the Zohar, but but anyway, it's found in both of those places. So why on earth are you using it in Christianity? It seems to me a blatant distortion.
Absolutely, yes. So if you're in a church that's got that, you need to do something. But Hermeticism is of interest because it's where you get this idea of emanationism from, and this is something where it's the concept that at the creation of the earth and the universe, etc., that it was a gradual flow out from the first reality, who is God. And this gives rise to a second reality, which is a lesser creation, which gives rise then to a third reality. And so it goes down. Each reality is less divine than the one before. And in this manner, we have the fallen state that we're in now, according to this belief system. So at each level of the hierarchy, it is less perfect than the step before. But the thing is that this also teaches, therefore, that in order to get back to God, or in order to become a god, you can reach up and climb slowly back the planes of existence towards God. And so that is what a lot of occultism is about. So that's why you've got all these degrees. And the Kabbalah is so you've got the Ein Sof, the divine spark coming in, the Promethean fire coming in at the top, and then going all the way down to the bottom Sephiroths, as it were. And so you can by ritual and initiation go back all the way up to the top. Of course, it's complete and utter nonsense. So where does this concept come from? And so Hermeticism, and it's a belief that's found in dark green religion and other areas as well. And obviously New Age religion is just full of it, this consciousness transformative idea and paradigm shift. All of these things are linked into man, occult idea of going back to God.
And of course, the New Age beliefs stemmed with probably originally Blavatsky, and then definitely Alice A. Bailey was the mother of it. And this all comes back from Theosophy. How does all that fit in with what's going on today?
Yes, well, the UN is directly linked into Theosophy with their meditation room, and also arguably the Ark of Hope that they have at the UN building in New York. And so Madame Blavatsky started the religion in 1875. It was an amalgamation of Eastern religions brought into the West, and the first time that the satanic or the Luciferian was used, the first time that the Eastern religions were used to mask the satanic and the Luciferian. And so she taught about the ascended masters as being highly evolved beings, who are running society and humanity from Shambhala, high in the Himalayas in Tibetan plains. And they represent the Great White Brotherhood, or the White Lodge, which watches over humanity, and that it's guiding and evolving us into a new utopian state, or into this seventh root race, and we're currently the fifth root race. So Theosophy teaches reincarnation, and that the purpose of life is a sort of spiritual emancipation of the soul to return back to the solar deity. And it promotes this emanationist cosmology that we just looked at, this idea of climbing up to God. But really behind it all is Lucifer, and Madame Blavatsky basically said that in her writings. She wasn't shy about it, but she did say that some people might argue with that, but I do mention the quote. It's from The Secret Doctrine, Volume 2, page 935. For it is he who was the harbinger of light, bright, radiant Lucifer, who opened the eyes of the automaton created by Jehovah as alleged, and he who was the first to whisper, in the day ye eat, therefore ye shall be as Elohim, knowing good and evil, can only be regarded as the light of a savior, an adversary to Jehovah, the personating spirit. He still remains an esoteric truth, the ever-loving messenger, the angel. That's what she's saying.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that's the reality. And then, of course, Alice Bailey, with her 24 books, or I think it was 24, that she wrote, it's blatant Luciferianism, and she kind of carried on with that Theosophy after Blavatsky, and that even fits in even more with the UN.
That's right, yes. The Robert Mueller, who was high up, he started World Goodwill, which he said was directly in line with the teachings of Alice A. Bailey. And of course, that's World Goodwill is basically indoctrinating children to the utopian one world state and some of these theosophic ideas. It's directly in line with it. It really is. And so Alice A. Bailey is probably the most important, other than the Bible, of course, the most important part of this situation. She was brought up in a fairly aristocratic family in Manchester, and she tried to commit suicide before she was about age 15. That's mentioned in her book, The Unfinished Autobiography. And she was into channeling. Hoot Kumi, who is one of their ascended masters, she used to receive messages from him. Interestingly enough, though, when it started, she wasn't very keen on the idea, but then she sort of got talked round to it. So from Alice A. Bailey, she died in 1949. She was heavily involved with the UN and still is. The Lucis Trust do administer the UN meditation room. And Lucis Trust, obviously Lucifer, the link is there.
And of course, they were originally called the Lucifer Publishing Company until people went, were a bit unhappy, and they tried to disguise it, I suppose, by changing it to Lucis instead of, or Lucius, depending on how you pronounce it, instead of Lucifer. But it's the same root.
Yes, absolutely. And so from there, we've got the Ark of Hope as well, Tony. That is a fake Ark of the Covenant that they have built, and on each side it has a spirit. It has a water, spirit, air, earth, and fire on each side of the panels, and it has a 96-inch carrying pole which is said to be unicorn's horns, which is an obvious reference to the New Age religion. And within the Ark of Hope is the Earth Charter document. And this is quite an important document because it's said to be the prototype New World Order constitution. It contains sort of a lot of dictates and ideas. For example, recognize that all beings are interdependent and every form of life has value. That's fantastic, but yet it's not, that doesn't really include it's a bit anti-abortion. So there are lots and lots of different types of constitutional statements within that Earth Charter. And Maurice Strong, who helped to write it, and Mikhail Gorbachev as well, said that they'd like it to be the Ten Commandments. So they're putting this false document, the Earth Charter, in the Ark of Hope, the false covenant. Of course, in the Old Testament, we know that the Ten Commandments were in the covenant, in the Ark of the Covenant, not the Earth Charter. So they're trying to reproduce this false religion there and push us into their systems. And part of it is the United Religions Initiative, which is promoted by the UN and was started by basically a Council on Foreign Relations member, Gillian Sorensen, in 1995. She started to promote this concept of getting all people talking about their religions with each other, which is good in a way. I'm not saying that that's bad, but at the same time, we can quite clearly see that United Religions Initiative is also about creating a common ground and shared values in order to slowly grey out doctrines and to create this false conversation. So,
yeah, it's very interesting. And how does the whole green thing, the sustainable development and all of that fit in with this?
Well, it is quite important to know about that because they are promoting the ecology and the green environment in order to use that as a method to create common ground. It's a sort of idea of deep ecumenism, that if we can have people looking at the ecology and obviously looking after the earth, I'm not saying that that's bad, but this concept that nature is alive and that can somehow teach us something, and that nature contains an ancient wisdom that can be imparted by exposure to the great outdoors and the enjoyment of the mountains, etc. This is all a way of greying out our beliefs and taking us into their pantheistic earth religion, which at its heart is what I believe the New World religion will be initially. And we can slowly see it in films like Avatar, which I think is a brilliant example, where you've got people on that planet living there, and it's a sci-fi film if you haven't seen it. It's worth seeing. It's an interesting film.
I have actually seen it. It's very new age, and it's also very interesting that James Cameron, who produced it, actually bought up a massive property here in New Zealand, and not, only a few hours from where I live, 3 hours drive max.
Right.
So, yes, there's a big link with New Zealand, and in fact, it was all filmed in New Zealand.
Right. Yes. Well, the idea of sort of jacking into the world tree. Jesus was on the world tree, but this time you're sort of plugging into the world tree in order to receive information. And could this be a shadow of the mark of the beast, the neural hive network that I mentioned in the book, that slowly we're being brought into? Obviously, we don't know. It's transhumanism that I'm talking about here, that eventually our existence will only be possible if in some way we can download our mind in some way, or upload thoughts and access the computer directly and information through this transhumanist network, that will only be able to exist with that. Could that be the mark of the beast, and that the image of God has been extinguished? So just going back a little bit, dark green religion is something that was first mentioned by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he wrote a book, Nature, in 1836, and it's dark green religion, dark because it refers to the belief that nature has an inbuilt sacredness and is alive with the godhood, and green because it is flowing from a deep sense of belonging to the connectedness of nature. And so man is simply another creature belonging in nature and is a product of evolution. So that's what dark green religion is, and that's pretty much in line with the scientism on evolution that we see today. So that's why I think that in order to bring people into this new societal religion, dark green religion as a civic utilitarian religion, may be what they're wanting to do.
And it's interesting how, commonly people refer to Mother Nature and Mother Earth. It's kind of like a counter of God, really, and very much Gaia worship or Earth worship, really. But most people just use those terms without even thinking about it.
Yes, because if you can bring up this idea of people living their lives to glorify the earth, then it means that they can get rid of nationalism. So it would reduce people's sovereignty. And this is what I believe is that the New World religion will be the system that the New World Order, it's all directly in line with the Sustainable Development and Agenda 21. And they'll use this fake religion in order to bring everyone into the Agenda 21, which is really a political agenda masked within an environmental agenda. So that's what this sort of Gaian animist concept is, and it's mentioned in The Lion King. We get this circle of life song, and once you've got an idea of it, you will see it everywhere, and that's why the Pope was saying that in his 2016 encyclical, he made the claim that it was the biggest threat to our existence, the environment. So he's beating the environmentalist drum. We've got to look after the environment, which of course we have, don't get me wrong, but behind it all, there's something else going on, and it's just a method of taking control, bringing everyone into their new religion.
And they sort of portray this, the earth is sacred kind of, which, there's nothing wrong with looking after the earth properly, done right, not at this sort of crazy extreme that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's right. There were a few people, I think, that committed suicide. That Bron Taylor, he wrote a very good book. I think it's called Dark Green Religion on this. It's quite a heavy read. I condense the whole of his book into about 2 pages. But it's worth looking at, Dark Green Religion, and you'll see that it's linked into New Age religion. And Waldo Emerson, he believed in Hermes Trismegistus, and he was a Pi. Is one of those college fraternities, a Pi Gamma. I can't quite remember the club that he was in, but he was one of those. I think he was quite an interesting chap, Rolf Emerson. But he was the first person to speak about this new dark green religion aspect that could be the core, the center of it. And then you've got sort of Christianity outside, you've got Islam, apostate Christianity, and all these other religions that are bolted onto it. And of course, Hinduism will be an easy one to bring in because their religion is very pantheistic already. It's already got some elements that are directly in line with the Earth Mother religion. So that's why when you hear the Pope talking about greenness and the ecology, you know that this is a method of bringing it all together, that it all fits hand in glove together.
And where does the Council on Foreign Relations and these other sort of groups fit in with this, the Bilderbergs and so on? And, what's their impact on the religious aspect?
Yes, well, we've got the Council of Foreign Relations is the de facto secret government that are running the US. So they're not necessarily world leaders, but they are running the US. Now, if you're a US parliamentarian, if you need to find someone to do a job, you go through the Council of Foreign Relations book, you find someone there, and then you choose them. And we see this happening all the time, that they're promoting their own people within. So the Council of Foreign Relations, we've had Gillian Sorensen, who I mentioned, and they're controlling a lot of what we're seeing in America. And Trump, he's got a lot of his cabinet members are actually Council of Foreign Relations, but less trilateral members, which is interesting. But Rick Warren, members of Council on Foreign Relations. Kenneth Copeland, he is pushing this idea of joining up with the Catholics, and this is the long-term strategy of bringing all the denominations together under the Pope, under Catholicism, and that's going to make it easier for them to grey out the doctrines of Christianity and bring us into their new system. But yes, Kenneth Copeland is there. Rick Warren, he's linked him with Tony Blair and his slightly emergent contemplative New Age teachings just creeping in there that we can see. So perhaps if you're in any of those churches, you need to do something about that and seriously pray and look at that. But yes, you see, the world really is run by, I know it sounds crazy, but it really, really is run by a hidden group of people. They control practically everything that we see.
I remember, I think the late Myron Fagan, he claimed that the CFR was basically the Illuminati repackaged for America. The modern sort of repackaging of the Illuminati was the Council on Foreign Relations.
That's right. And if you read any of the Council of Foreign Relations book, you'll see that they're really globalists. What is a globalist? They're people taking us into the new world government, so the one world government. So
what's next? In this agenda, like to get us to the one world religion, is the third temple in Jerusalem going to be an essential part of this, do you think? I know some people, friends and that, are going, whoa, there's this red heifer being born there at the moment. Could this be prophetic and all of that for bringing in the third temple? What are your thoughts?
Well, does the Bible mention the third temple? I think it probably does, but we've got the first temple, which was Solomon's from 1000 BC to about 587 with Nebuchadnezzar. And then the second temple from the 6th century, and then it was vastly improved in the time of Jesus up to the 70 AD, which was destroyed. So I think the third temple will be built, yes, and this is why Trump has made Jerusalem the capital of Israel. But it's almost impossible for the third temple to be a true temple because there's no priesthood. And there's no priesthood because they don't know who the Levites are. And there's no Levites because no one's got the genealogical records. They were destroyed in the 1st century AD. So there might be some people who are Levites who are living in Israel or elsewhere, but how are they going to prove it? When Ezra set up the temple, they had to prove that they were belonging to the priesthood for the temple to go forward. So I have a feeling that behind it all is the same spirit of Babylon that we've been seeing, and that the third temple will be this fake thing with maybe they'll move the Ark of Hope over from New York to Jerusalem.
And the third temple is a central part of Masonic doctrine. So, I think that there's going to be a lot of Masonic involvement in it if this goes ahead. I did see something the other day about Vladimir Putin being all for the idea of a third temple being built as well. So it's very interesting.
Yes, it's something to watch. And in a way, the other thing is transhumanism. We need to keep an eye on that because the people that are running us, they can't really be trusted with these very, very powerful sciences that are coming out. And they'll use it to weaponize it, and it's not particularly. I'm not anti technology. It's brought many good things, but the trouble is there's coming a time where the technology that there is so powerful that man will have sort of run out of time, as it were, and that the transhumanism will take over. That's possibly what will happen. So. Yeah, and we need to.
Yeah, and so as we're getting close to rounding out, what do we do? What's the important thing for us to do?
Well, keep your eyes on Christ. He is the source of all good things. Expose the cryptocracy. we've really got to get this message out there. And there are vast swathes of people, in particular in England, who they're just so indoctrinated. They have no inkling how they're being managed and run. All of this Brexit stuff, we'll get the Brexit that we get. We're not going to get whatever they don't want. It's already been decided probably 20, 30 years ago. And yet people are running around getting angry about it. So we need to expose the cryptocracy, keep our eyes on Jesus, stay close to him, and always remember that we do have the victory in the end, and that God is sovereign. He is behind all of this, and that there are his purposes that are being worked through. So keep the faith. Yeah.
Absolutely. So can you just tell the listeners again the book that you have and where they can find it?
Yes, it's available on Amazon, and so it's got worldwide coverage pretty much. And it's called The New World Religion and the Beliefs of the Elite. And I hope you will buy it, and that it will start you to look at many areas. It covers a lot of ground, and
it can be bought as a hard copy, and can it be bought digitally as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's in America it's $5. It's on the Kindle, and in the UK it's about £4, and it's also in paperback version. I've tried to keep it inexpensive because I want to get this message out to everyone. And yeah, please do buy it.
And I would definitely say that if people have a few resource books that on these type of New World Order topics and that this one is a must. It's got to be part of that collection because it is so much good information in it. I'd like to get the hard copy. At the moment, I've only got a digital copy, but I'm certainly planning on trying to get a hard copy as well, and I would highly recommend it. So it's been fantastic talking to you again today, James. I've really enjoyed it, and the hour has flown by.
Yeah, has gone quickly, yes. Thank you, Tony. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you, and I wish A Minute to Midnight every success going forward.
And thank you, and no doubt we will be talking again in the future. So, thank you. It's been just a pleasure to be talking to you, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you, Tony. God bless.
God bless you too. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Actually, after the interview, James told me that he's going to send me a hard copy of his book, so that's very generous of him, and I'm going to really look forward to getting a hold of that copy. And folks, don't forget to like the video and to share it. And if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, do so. And you can find our shows on YouTube, on iTunes, and also on our website, aminutemidnight.com. All the music in the shows is my music. I write, play and record it. And you can find music on our website if you want to download the A Minute to Midnight music for free. And we do run A Minute to Midnight, as I mentioned at the beginning, completely by donations. If you're able to help us, that's awesome. And I just want to say thank you to the people that do, because we couldn't run this without your help. That's about it for this show. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a great week. God bless, and we'll catch you in another show in a few days' time.